Okay, so in this video, I'm going to show you how we can do some data analysis using Google Data Studio. So for data, I'm going to go to data.cityofchicago.org. And here I'm going to download some data. So I'll just go to, the first one is fine, administration and finance. Pick this first data set. See, it's a data set here on the right. So if I click on this current employee names, salaries, and position titles, that should be fine. So if we scroll down, we can see an example of this data. So basically we have job title, department, type, full-time, part-time, annual salary. Then for people who are not paid by salary, they have this hourly rate thing happening. So that's our data sample, about 33,000 rows of data, 34,000. I'm going to go ahead and download this. So I'll go back on top, click on export. CSV is fine. So here's that CSV file, about 2.3 megabytes, so it's not too big. I'm going to go ahead and import this to Google Data Studio. So to do this, I'm going to go to datastudio.google.com. And we want to start by basically just creating a data set and importing that CSV file. So I'm going to go to create and go to data source. And as you can see, we can use different data sources here. I'm going to use the file upload to use that CSV file. So click on the select, click to upload files. So here I have my file. I'm going to go ahead and open that. And it's going to upload this and process the file. So if everything goes well, we should get a green icon here. Let's just give it a second. There it is, uploaded. So we got our data source. I'm going to go ahead and click on this connect on top. And this is going to show us the same columns from our data set. So just to refresh your memory, if I scroll down, see we have name, job title, department, full, part-time. So we want to make sure we just choose the right data type for each column. So most of these should be text, with exception of the last two. So hours, salary, and hourly rate. We don't want these to be text. So I'll go back to Data Studio. So annual salary, which is this column, right now it's picking that up as text. That's not accurate, so I'm going to change this to numeric. I suppose we could also do currency. Let's do currency. That makes more sense. Currency, USD, good. Default aggregation. So this is the default function it would use on this column, but you can change this later on. So I'm going to choose average. Department, full-time, part-time, those are text. Hourly rate, so that should be, again, currency. And maybe I'll choose average again as a default. Aggregation. Job title, name. The only other one is typical hours. So this one. So this should be a number. And again, I'll just pick something here, doesn't matter. And then it automatically creates this record count, which basically gives you the option to just count how many. So it's not one of the columns, but it's automatically created by Data Studio for us. So on top left here, we have the name for this connection. If you want to modify it, this is where you do it. This is fine for me the way it is. I'm just going to keep it as is. You can just name it whatever you like. Once this is done, you can just click on this create report to create a report out of this right away. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So because I clicked to create a report from that particular data source, it automatically adds it as a data source for this report. So that's fine. I'm going to add to report. And whatever table it gives me, I'm just going to get rid of it. So we have different visualization types. If I go under this add a chart, see it gives us different options we can use. We have tables, we have charts, we have a scorecard. So scorecard would be just one number. So if I just put this on, click here. See, it automatically picked up that record count column as the metric from our data set. And it basically says there are 33,702 records. I don't really care about it all that much. Just wanted to show you what it does. So if you want just one total number, that's the way to get it. I'll go here under add a chart and I'll do a pivot table. The first one on the left should be fine. I'll click on this. Click here someplace where I want this displayed. See, it tried to do something automatically, but it didn't work. So that's fine. We don't really care about what it does. I'm going to have to create my own pivot myself. So the first thing is what's going to be the metric. So the metric it picked is the record count. So I'm going to keep that for a second, although I'm going to change it in a second. Now I'm going to do row and column breakdown. So right now, if I wanted to break this down by department, for example, so I'm going to go to row dimensions and change this from name, what it picked up, to department. So there's my department. I'm going to just drag it over here and get rid of name from there. And for now, I don't want any column dimensions. I'm going to get rid of this, job titles. So as of right now, this table should show us total number of employees by department. So what I want to do, I want to get the average salary by department. So to do that, I'll go to my annual salary field and drag it to metrics. And remember, I picked average as the default metric for this. So it should just pick that up automatically. So I'm going to wait a second. So right now it automatically picked up average because that was our default, right? Now let's say you didn't want average. See, it says AVG right to the left of this annual salary. But if I go here and click on that AVG to edit it, see, I can change it to different functions. So assuming I didn't want this to be average, I want it to be the total salary paid by department, I would switch this to sum. And there it is. We can have total paid by department. In this case, I actually wanted the average, so I'm going to do that. And see here on top, we have name. So right now, this says annual salary. So if you wanted to change this, you could just go here and type, hit enter, and that's going to go here. And same way, if I have this record count, I can go and edit this and change this to number of employees. Assuming I want to sort this data from highest average to the lowest average, I would now go here under the sorting section and currently see that sorting by number of employees. So I'm going to change that, click on this, and go to average annual salary. And because it's ordered descending, it's the highest on top and lowest all the way down. We might also want to reformat these numbers so that it's easier to read and maybe drop decimal points from the right. So to do something like this, I'm going to go to style section. And here we could change different things about the styling of this table. But mainly what I'm interested in is this metric section. So there's this metric 1 where we can change our decimal places to, for example, 0. So the metric 1 is the first one, see? And we can also do compact numbers to have something like this. I'm going to go back to the regular, just do 0 decimal places. So this is so far great, but there is one thing I want to change here is this. If I go back to my data set, this is getting the average of this annual salary column, but not everybody is on annual salary. Some of them are hourly and hourly rate. So I want to create my own column that's going to give me either the annual salary when it's annual salary or calculate the total using these numbers over here. So we have 20 hours and 1986 per hour, for example, for this person. So if I take those and multiply them, it should give me the total for that person. So to do this, I'm going to go back. So we don't do this here. We're going to go back and do this in our data set. So I'm going to go back to this. See, this is that data source. I already have this open, but if you didn't have this open, what you would do if I just go back. So this would be our basically regular screen in Data Studio. And here you would have your data sources. So if you go under this data sources section, you would see the data source that you already built. So that was the one I just did. And you could just click on this and open that, and it should get you back to this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go here on top right and add a field to this. And this field is going to be a result of a calculation. And this is what I'm going to do to create this column. So there's no if statement in current Data Studio functions list. I'm pretty sure it will be coming at some point. There is a case statement, but case doesn't support calculations in the statement, so that will not work. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do a little trick here. I'm going to do this calculation, this typical hours multiplied by hourly rate. And then take that and multiply it by, I don't know, 52 probably, because we have 52 weeks. And then to that, I'm going to add this annual salary column. And what's going to happen, because annual salary, there's nothing in it, we should just get the total. And then in this case on top, because there's nothing in typical hours and hourly rate, again, it should just add this annual salary and get that total. I'll go back and do this in a formula. Here we are. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take that hourly rate, drag and drop it here, multiply it by the column typical hours, and then that whole thing should be multiplied by 52, or you could do 52 point whatever that number is. I'm just going to go with 52. That's good enough for me. I'm going to take this and add our annual salary to this. And I'm going to give this column a name on top. I'm going to call this total pay. So I'll go ahead and save this. Done. Now let's go back to our report. And here I'm going to click on this, go under my fields, and I should have that new total pay column. Now, in case you don't see that total pay column, just refresh this whole thing and it should show up. I'm going to take this total pay and drag it to my fields list. Maybe I'll put it as the second one. So right now we're getting a bunch of zeros. Something is wrong. I'm going to go back and see what's going on. I'm going to go back here. So it seems like those blanks are not treated as zeros. Our calculation fails as a result of that. Let's go see what we can do about that. So I'm going to go back to this, and I need to get back to editing this total pay. So I'm going to just click on this little FX icon, get me back to my formula. So I suppose what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do it as a two-step process. So I'm going to go back and rename this field. Instead of calling this total pay, let's call it total pay for non-salary. And I'll update this. And then what I'm going to do, I'm just going to create another field here, which I'm going to call total pay. So here, I'm just going to use that case. And for case, we have to have case and end for this case. So in here, we're going to do when annual salary equals to null. In this case, null meaning it's blank. Then we're going to use that column total pay for non-salary. Else, we'll just use annual salary. So in this case, we'll basically just check if that annual salary is blank. Then we'll put the other number in there. Otherwise, we'll just use annual salary. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. So this is, since this is a null statement, this should be is null, not equals to null. Let's hit save. So now we have the total pay. So let's go check what happened. So this is that old column that's just renamed. I'm going to get rid of this out of here and replace it with our new total pay column. Now we have both of them combined. So if I switch this one to sum for a second, just for us to verify that everything is accurate, and then also add that total for non-salary to our metrics, we should be able to see that if we add these two columns together, the first two, it adds up to the third one. And the second one should not be average. So let's switch this to sum too, so we can do this comparison. So right now, if we take this number, that's 1.2 billion. If we add this 386,000 to it, see over here, that should add up to 359,000 in the end. Okay, so that makes sense. So it seems like we're adding them up correctly. So that means now I could just get rid of these other two columns and I could use this total pay column instead. Now I'm going to go back to the source itself and just update the type for this column, make sure it's currency, and also probably change default function to average. So I'll go back here, go back to all fields. So now we have this total pay. I'm going to switch it from number to currency. And finally, that should be average as our default function. So with this, if we go back to our report, now it picked up the formatting, but we did change the function already. So we have to pick that up, average. So I'm just going to say average pay. So now we have average pay combined with our full-times and part-times. Now we could then use our columns to break this down. Now we had this column that was giving us the type of employment, like full-time and part-time. We could take that and pull it to our column dimensions. I'm going to make this bigger a little bit. And we'll get our average part-time versus full-time. As you can see, there are not that many part-times here, but there are some. And as you can see, it says F and P because that's what comes out of our data set. So if I go back to our data set, see in here, it says F and it says P, which basically translates into our report as F and P. So we might want to change that to make this look nicer. So to do this, I'm going to go back to our data source. So yet again, we're going to add another column. And here I'm going to use another case statement. And I'm going to say when that full-time, part-time column equals to F, then we just want to say full-time, else we want to say part-time. I'm going to name this column employment type, hit save. So now we should have our new calculated field, which if I go back to fields list, it should be text. Good. So if I go back to our reporting now, instead of using this column as a breakdown, which is full-time or part-time, I'm going to get rid of it and replace it with my new column, which should be employment type. And now I have full-time, part-time, because I basically just replaced those values with my text. Now, in this case, since there's not much going on with full-time and part-time, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to remove this column. And I'm going to just give a filtering option. So there's an option to filter to full-time and part-time. And for that, we're going to go here on top and do a filter control. I'm going to go here and put that filter in here someplace. Now we're going to have to choose the column by which we're filtering this. And that's going to be that new column, employment type. So right now, see, if I go to view the report, there's going to be this filter. If I open this, See, it gives us the total number for full-time employees, total number for part-time employees. And we could just uncheck, for example, part-time, and it should show us the totals for just full-time, or we can do the opposite, do the part-time. So now we get the average for part-time. And the reason it shows this 31,000 next to this full-time and part-time is because when I was choosing, let me actually go back to edit. When I was building this filter, see the metric is the record count. That's why it shows those totals in there. So if you wanted those totals to show the average pay, maybe you could just replace this with your other column. But for me, this is fine. So that's a nice filter for us to do full-time, part-time. Looks pretty good. And you could just format this to make it look nicer. I'm not gonna spend too much time on formatting on this. So now I got most of the fields, the main fields that I need to be able to do the reporting I need. I'm gonna create another report. I'm gonna add a page. So this will be page 2 of our report. We already had page 1. So I'm gonna add another pivot table to this. You could also add a table in this case. If you're not doing multiple columns, then table should be fine as well. But just in case, I'm just gonna do a pivot table. Make this a little bigger. And I don't want names here. So I'm gonna replace that with department, get rid of names. And then I'm gonna break down the department by job title. Column dimension, I'm gonna X out of that. And we have our record count. So right now we have the department broken down by job title and then the total count. Now, if you wanted to get total pay, again, we would take total pay column, drag it to our metrics, and we got our totals. So if you wanted these sorted again by total pay, I go here, sorting, change it to total pay, and I'm gonna remove decimal points for this total pay. So I'll go to style, and this would be metric 2. So I'm gonna switch that to 0 decimal points. So I'll just quickly also make the text a little bigger here. Right now, see this table labels, it's 12. I'm gonna switch that to something like 16. So we have a little larger numbers to look at. And that's pretty much it. So if I keep scrolling down, see there's a lot going on here. Let's just go under view for a second. So this is that report. And if we keep scrolling down, at some point it's gonna go to the next department here. So maybe we should make this department column a little bigger and this column a little bigger to make sure we can see it. But because there is so much going on in here, what I'm probably gonna do, I'm just gonna add this department as a filter on top, so we can filter to a department and then just see job titles and their totals. So I'm gonna go back to edit, click on this, remove department out of here, make this sizing a little different, and add a filter to this on top. And that filter will be by department. So I'm gonna take department, drag it to dimension, record count. Yeah, that's fine. Just to show you the differences, I'm just gonna replace this record count this time to total pay. That will be the average. Something like this. So now if we go to our view, currently we're looking at job titles in all departments, so we can see who are the highest paid people here. So now if we go on top here and click on this filter, see here, instead of giving us the count, it gives us the average for that particular department. And if I just wanted to look, for example, at mayor's office, hit only, see we get this. So it gives us the total pay for each one of those and so on. So if you wanted another department, let's say we want to look at police, only. Here we go. You should be able to see the count and total paid. And how many people are actually in that position. So at some point, hopefully we see much higher count, like regular, see police officer, 9,761 people. And then we have the average pay. Maybe I should rename this column from total pay to average. I'm going to go back and click edit and click on this. Instead of this saying total pay, I'm going to edit this field and say average annual pay or something like that. I'm going to call this one Data Studio Fundamentals. And that should be it for this first video. So in the next video, I'll show you a few other more advanced tricks like blending data, and then also how to represent numbers as percentages. But for this one, that should be it. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.